Yeah, we're going into Nate's segment here because I promised him that he would have as much time as I can possibly give him.
Well,
we appreciate you getting involved.
And I really appreciate the time, Andy, once again. What I wanted to do is quickly start off with a CalPERS factoid to kind of wet the whistle, and then I wanted to jump into last week's question from the caller.
Just a little thing. I tried to bring up putting you on for RCRC, and the looks that I got were people are really afraid of exposing the facts on this. And I had a Facebook comment was, is that really going to happen? Excuse me. It's the house of cards is falling.
We have to look at these things soberly, and we have to be intellectually honest about what we're seeing. And is it something that I love talking about? No. But is it something that I'm passionate about and passionate about in a very healthy way? That is, I think that pushing debts to your to the descendants, to your grandchildren and grandchildren, is an immoral act. So deal with it now. Deal with it now. So okay. The article, the factoid I wanted to jump in with is, as we stated previously, CalPERS yield, that is the earnings on the assets under investment for the fiscal year that just ended June 30, 2017, the yield was 11.2%. So that's a strong yield that was greater than the 7.375 that the assumed discount rate or yield is, that the actuaries use. So 11.2%, good yield. Well, I wanted to temper that a little bit with some technical comments. When you are 68% funded, which is what CalPERS ended at this year, so by the end of the year, 6/30/2017, CalPERS was 62% funded, 68%, excuse me. What happens is you have to calculate that into the yield, because what I'm saying is you are not fully invested, 100% assets meeting the obligations or the liabilities. When you're not fully invested at 100%, if you're less than 100%, you have to use that percentage, so in this case 68%, and multiply it against the yield to obtain the real yield. Okay, because the idea is as follows, and I'm going to do the calculation, then I'm going to describe the reasoning. So the calculation is simple. You take 11.2%, multiply it times 68%, and then that gets you to a net figure of 7.62%. Okay, so 11.2 yield times the amount that you are funded, 68%, equals 7.62. So that tempering, that 11.2% yield is really effectively 7.62%, which is quite a bit less, right? Almost 4% less. So the yield, while it sounds good this year, 11.2%, well, we're not fully funded. We don't have a fully funded pension plan at CalPERS. So again, even that great yield is quite a bit less than it seems.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's truth in actual management, which has been a sore spot with me, in that they aren't really telling you what is actually happening. And people say the 9 most feared words in America is an old saying, but why would you trust a government who has been lying to you and is okay? Governor Brown, cap and trade. Does he tell you that 60% of that is going straight to the choo-choo? No. Okay. So why? And Matt mentioned he's looking at the taxes taken out. Okay. Well, you haven't seen anything yet because of the cap and trade, and that's just the biggest lie. All it is a means for Governor Brown to pay for his choo-choo.
Are they championing this 11.2 percent as if that were such good news to kind of pull the wool over people's eyes, or are they not? Do they have bad intentions with that? Are they trying to make it seem less pressing than it really is?
Earlier on the show, Andy had somebody, he played somebody that was speaking to whole truths and half-truths. And I think that that's probably the appropriate answer here, Matt, is that, yes, 11.2% yield is factually correct. They did obtain that. But the other half truth that would make this a full truth is say, but understand when you're not fully funded, the amount that we're not funded, so in this case, 32%, which is 100% minus 32 equals 68% funded. Well, that 32% of cash that should have been down in Sacramento at CalPERS and employed in investments would have yielded itself 11.2% as well. Well,
Right.
we lost that 32% of the investment pool that we do not have down at CalPERS. We lost the yield that should have been on that.
So really, it would have only been 11.2% had we been 100% funded.
That's correct. Yes. If we were super funded and we had an 11.2% return, that is, if we were 110% funded, such as we were back in the year 1999, as we talked about last week with SB 400, when you were super funded, if you had that great yield year, 11.2%, you would have bonus money. Because
Right.
you would have excess yield on top of your already 100% funded status and the yield associated with that. So, yeah, it has, and that's why I keep repeating that, and again, hard conversation. People often don't want to talk about it, but we either deal with it today and we have exponential benefits that we'll reap by dealing with it today. If we do not, we will have exponential negative impacts because our options continue to get limited. So, moving on to last week's question that was asked right in the last couple of minutes of the segment, the individual on the phone, I believe you talked with him, Matt. What he was asking is, he said something about CalPERS and Orange County's retirement system and how he was wondering if it was linked to, or he was asserting that it was linked to the bankruptcy. Is that your recollection?
Right. He was trying to point out that he believes they switched from a CalPERS to a private retirement plan or something along those lines, and that it helped them get out of the bad situation.
Great. Okay, so I'm not an Orange County expert, but my research shows that those are separate issues. The bankruptcy occurred in 1994, and it was really separate from the Orange County employee retirement system as it exists today. So why do I think that, or where am I coming from? The retirement system in Orange County was created about 70 years ago. So the bankruptcy that occurred in 1994, one, it was within the county, not the retirement system. Again, it's an Orange County retirement system, but it's governed by a separate board. It's a separate agency or a separate entity altogether. And by the way, I wanted to describe that it's what we call a 37 Act county. So the County Employees Retirement Act of 1937 established the ability for local governments, counties, to create their own retirement system. So they didn't have to do a joint powers authority sort of system with other counties, such as the CalPERS system is as today. They could do their own. Orange County opted to do that by a vote.
Didn't they have a financial bump about 83, 84?
Well, in 94, they had the bankruptcy. I'm not sure if that's what you're referring to. I'm not sure.
I used to do the payroll for Orange County.
Oh, well, I wanted to talk a little bit about the bankruptcy, just to make sure everybody up here has some basic understanding of it, because I think it's important. So kind of quickly running through it, what happened is Orange County in 1994, they were greatly over-leveraged. And by that I mean their treasurer tax collector was greatly over-leveraged. And what he was doing, and this was allowable at the time, his name is Robert Citron, he was borrowing more money at a cheaper rate, or I'll just say borrowing money. So not just the Treasury investment pool, which he already has invested to the tune of billions of dollars. He borrowed on top of that at a relatively low interest rate, and then invested that money as well. And so that's a situation called leveraging. And if anybody out there is a historian, I'm sure when you start to think of this, you think of, and I have to remember the the what it's called, but this is reminiscent of October 29th, 1929. What was that? That was Black Tuesday. And Black Tuesday was the beginning of the 1930s worldwide depression, having kind of begun here in the United States. And, well, at any rate, that's a similar situation back then as what happened to the treasurer. He was over-leveraged. It's called something on the line. I just don't remember from high school when I was doing the Black Tuesday project. But way over-leveraged. He bet against the interest rates. He thought they were going to go down. They went up. He lost $1.6 billion kind of overnight. Had to record that loss in the Treasury, and hell ensued. So that was an interesting and terrible result. What came out of that, though, were some really great benefits. Accountants across the world, especially in this country, we changed the way we were doing business in terms of how we were reporting debt on books, and how we were requiring governmental agencies to disclose that debt and do what's called mark-to-market. Mark-to-market came out of this bankruptcy, and that compelled local jurisdictions to mark up to right now the fair market value of the investments held in the Treasury. So you couldn't carry it at what you're ultimately going to get. You had to carry it at what the market value today was. So that's a more conservative approach, and that would have assisted in Orange County not being able to do this, because they would have had to have reported these downward swings in their investments more contemporaneously, so that there would have been a light shined on it, and then action or change likely would have occurred quicker, and it wouldn't have ballooned into the problem it became. So one of the things I really like about the Orange County retirement system, we've talked quite a bit in prior shows about the things that CalPERS does that don't generally benefit employers, local jurisdictions. One of them was, for example, no longer investing in certain classes of stock because they didn't like, for example, the social impact of those stocks, or their perceived political reasons for those stocks being immoral.
Wasn't that a violation of their ethical responsibilities to the end user there?
Absolutely. I mean, to me, it's an utter breach of fiduciary responsibility. As I joke with my friend, it would be the quintessential example of a fiduciary breach, and it's just ever more egregious because we're talking about billions of dollars. One thing I really like about the Orange County retirement system is that employees, not the employer, but the employees that participate in their pension plan, they must pay at least 50% of the contributions for that pension. And you'd say, well, that's kind of steep. That's a lot of money, or that's a lot to take out of an employee's paycheck. And I would agree with that. It is. But if the employee is making the decision to seek a pension, a defined benefit plan, they want this pension to pay them a fixed amount of money through their retirement. They want that risk associated with the monies that they're setting aside. They want it borne by the taxpayers. So with all of that, I would say, yeah, they're getting a pretty good deal, and they need to pay an appropriate amount for that benefit into perpetuity, or at least until they pass. So it's a great benefit. Well, they need to pay for it. A huge benefit of making a 50% situation reality is that the employees have skin in the game. Mm-hmm. When the unions are bargaining with county officials, if they're bargaining from a position of we have to own 50% of this cost, for example, they may think twice about a benefit increase. Now, the benefit increase can't occur anymore after PEPRA. PEPRA, January 1st, 2013, says we no longer can offer these kinds of pensions to new hires. Myself, I'm in that. I'm under that. So I'm a 2% at 62 pension, which is the least lucrative of the 3 tiers in Sutter County. And but I'm totally fine with it. It's a sustainable rate, and it's actually a great rate, 2%. So the 50% payment from the employee for their own pension, I think, is very important, if only for the skin in the game component, that they're equally contributing to their own retirement as their employer.
God forbid they actually pay for something they want.
Well, they're getting a great benefit, so again, I think it's appropriate. I thought it would be nice to maybe run a recap of the last many shows.
That would be great.
And kind of synthesize it down to what I see as about the 5 or so options available to us.
Now, I put your YouTube up there, so hopefully it had more hits. Because I've had some inquiries about, is this really true?
Yeah, well, I appreciate you doing that, and I hope more and more that this information gets out. I'm trying to keep these segments specific to a single or a couple of topics, so that folks can kind of a la carte listen and not have to wade through tens of minutes of listening. So, or I should say hours of listening. So here are the options. First, I believe. This is the options surrounding our pension situation at local government, and specifically, and I would say Yuba and Sutter counties, because I think we're similarly poised or positioned. So we need to advance legislation that allows easier exit from PERS. Local government should not be, and I'll say it this way, because it's all about the people, it's all about the residents, the taxpayers, the constituency. But I'm just going to speak to the board for a moment. The board of the county, representing the people of the county, it should have the ability to choose the retirement system for the employees in the county. And the situation as it is today, and how it has been since the inception of CalPERS, is that there's almost zero ability to exit CalPERS. The only way you can do it, pretty much, is circa City of Loyalton, it's all about, if you can't pay the piper at the time of closing your plan with CalPERS, we will cut the benefits of your retirees. That's kind of the only way out, and that's a horrible, horrible result. And there's as I've talked about before, there's a couple of reasons for that, and the primary reason is because they change the way they invest your money at CalPERS. They change it to, instead of having any exposure to equities, stocks that obtain greater yields, they move all of your money at that moment that you close into a 2% super, what they call risk-free investment pool, which is bonds, treasury bills, very, very low-risk investments that, by the way, also yield a low yield because it's low risk.
Instead of doing what they should be required to do based upon our trust or their fiduciary responsibility, and is doing the best for their clients, which doesn't seem to be on their radar at all.
I think they're conflicted. I think that experience and history has shown that CalPERS is either CalPERS or the leaders of CalPERS are conflicted, and at times they lose sight of who they work for. They should work for employees and employers. They shouldn't work for unions or for anybody else. So that's kind of the first thing, is I really do believe we need to advance legislation. And Andy has talked about approaching RCRC and other avenues to do this. And I think the only way to do it is to do it together. There's no way a single county is going to make a significant impact. We've got to approach this together. And I also mentioned previously AB 681 by Senator Morlock by the same place, Orange County. So AB 681 is a great start. Second option is we can change after we exit. We would change to either one of the following. We would either create a 37 Act retirement system, such as Orange County's retirement system. There's quite a few others around the state. So 37 Act. And so we transfer the responsibility for the retirement system to a local directorship. And I'm a firm believer in local is better. Local is better. The more local, the better for representation. Or if we don't want to create our own retirement system, we only offer, for example, 403B or 457. So those are like the 401k plans in private sector, but for government, 403B, 457. 403B is the most akin to a 401k, again, in government, and the 457 plan is a deferred compensation plan, which operates very similarly to a 401k as well. So the 401k option, or we do a hybrid. We, again, like I've talked about in a previous show when we were talking about CalSTRS, they offer a hybrid to their new hires. So you either have a 401k, which you can contribute to a course and then receive a county or a governmental employer match, or you can select the 403B, the defined benefit plan, the pension. And again, I would say the better option in that hybrid approach would be that pension would be a local pension, a 37 Act pension. Mm-hmm. And then finally, do nothing. And if we do nothing, about the best I think we can do by doing nothing major change-wise is to continue to try to sock away every bit of excess money that we can squeeze out of the turnip to set aside to be able to afford these major increases that are coming from CalPERS over the next 5 years.
You know, in the budget process, that's what kills us, is the increases in both medical and the retirement. And unfortunately, the union management doesn't want to deal on a level playing field. They don't want to put a factor in the longevity in what an actual salary is, but they want to use the base salary that is not actually indicative of what they're making. We don't have an attrition rate in our health and human services. We don't have an attrition rate in our jail. We active deputies, yes, but with the longevity, I mean, our CAO, is making a reasonable situation, but he's well worth those dollars. But again, he's got the 1.3 or 1.37, and that factor is just killing us. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yes, Andy, I wanted to kind of throw in this last bit here of thank you again for the time you've allowed me. Also, I wanted to point folks to One Eye Blind Media on YouTube, One Eye Blind Media on YouTube, and or to Andy Vasquez on YouTube. Those you now have capability to watch our program on there. And my segment's called Dollars and Cents, of course, Matt's Pimley's Point. And then Andy is the opener.
Oh, okay. Is that what it is? Well, cross him out. we mute that thing. But just for grins and giggles, you should be able to, hopefully, because most people search on iTunes and CalPERS, and you just don't show up in that because of the title that you chose. If you put in there somewhere CalPERS in that title, you'd be much more effective when you search that thing. Okay, are we about? All right, we're gonna call it quits, and we thank Nate for showing up again. And like I said, you're on as long as you want to be on, and we really appreciate you being here because this.